It's Friday, you know what that means. Welcome to another Tech Help Quick Queries video, brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I'm your instructor, Richard Rost. This is Quick Queries number 32. What's a Quick Queries video? Well, I get a bunch of questions all week long, and they don't all need their own video, so I mash them all together, and that's what Quick Queries videos are about. So let's take a look at our first question. First up is a question from Sean, one of my Silver members. He says, when blanking out fields before writing new values, does it make sense to update them to null or an empty string? I'm wondering about space efficiency since my ACCDB file is nearing 2 gigabytes and struggling to complete update operations. Okay, a lot to unpack here. First of all, there's not much difference between null and empty string as far as space in your database goes for most average sized databases, depending on the number of records that you have and a couple other things. Back in the 80s and 90s, when hard drive space was at a premium, it really made a big difference. But now it's not that big of a deal with these giant drives. But if you're getting close to that 2 gigabyte limit, it might be. I believe if memory serves, a null value takes up no space, but an empty string takes up 2 bytes. So I guess if you've got millions of records, it could make a difference. Now, nulls are generally better for query performance, so it's a little tiny bit faster for the database to run if you're doing queries based on nulls. But the main difference to me between a null and an empty string is that a null says, I don't know what this value is. Like if you're entering in a customer record and you didn't get their address, you leave the address fields null. Whereas an empty string says, I know what this value is, it's none, it's nothing. Right? For example, middle name fields, okay? If it's null, you might just not know what their middle name is. But if you make it an empty string, that means this person has no middle name. My grandfather, perfect example, his name was Benny Sperduti. He had no middle name. His dog tags from the Navy said Benny Nunn Sperduti. So that's when I use an empty string to indicate I know that this field has no value. Right? Now, if your database is pushing 2 gigabytes, there's a few things you can do. First, make sure you regularly compact and repair. All right, that might shrink things down. You can always split the database, right? Even if you've got your database split into front and back ends, you can still split your back end into multiple database files, right? You can literally, I have probably, 10 different databases that have multiple back end files. You can put customers in one ACCDB file. You can put orders in another one. And that way, now your limitation is 2 gigabytes per table, right? And even then, you can split tables up. Let's say you've got a table with tons of fields in it, but not everybody has has data in all of those fields. Let's say you've got first name, last name, address for most everybody, but then you got a bunch of other stuff like demographic information or whatever that you don't have for everybody. Well, you can split that stuff off into another table as well, and then just use a one-to-one relationship between those. So there's lots of tricks you can do to stay under that 2 gigabyte limit. I got videos on most of this stuff. I'll put links down below. And of course, the ultimate solution to this is if you're running over 2 gigabytes or close to running over 2 gigabytes, just upgrade to SQL Server. And then that's got a much larger limit. So great question. Yeah, you could, if they're empty strings and for no other reason than you just want to make, it's blank, then sure, change them all to nulls and you'll save a little tiny bit of space. But that's the only time I ever use an empty string is to indicate I know it has a value and the value is blank. Next up, we got a question from Alberto, one of my Silver members. He says, I've been using your technique of sharing a functions module across multiple Access databases. Recently, I made a change to one of the functions that accidentally broke 2 or 3 of my other databases. What's the best way to prevent this kind of issue? Well, the only way to prevent it 100% of the time is to not do it. For everybody else, this is the video he's referring to, and I teach you how to make a module that you can then share between different databases. So you don't have to keep copying the same code. Let's say you got a function, right? Like here I wrote one called double it. It just takes x and multiplies it by 2. So if you call the double it function, it does that, returns a value. And you can have that module in all of your databases. So you don't have to keep copying and pasting code. Now this works great for simple things that aren't going to change much. Like I have one that just simply takes in first name, middle name, last name, and then I think prefix and suffix too. and then it just returns a properly formatted string, taking into account all of those variables. It could be Mr. Richard Rost, it could be Mr. Richard D. Rost Jr., that kind of thing. And it puts the spacing in. So that's something that chances are, if I make a modification to it, it's not going to break something inadvertently. But if you got something more complicated that does a bunch of steps and you make a little minor change to it, you have to anticipate all of the ways that you're using that code in all of your databases. I've done something like this too. I've broken databases too because I changed a sub or a function and I didn't realize, oh, wait a minute, 3 other forms were using this sub in a different kind of way. So you just have to be careful. And I would say if it's something simple, like I just mentioned, put it in a shared module, right? If it's complicated or at all specific to one database, keep it in that database. That's just my opinion. And of course, the proper solution to most of this is to back up and test and back up and test and always keep backups of your backups, right? Keep historical backups too, in case you realize, oh, I changed something 2 weeks ago. You can go back 3 weeks and get the backup from then. So I got a whole separate video on backups. I'll put a link down below for that too. Next up, a tip from Paul. I'm always constantly trying to get the full path and file name of a file somewhere, right, to use in my code. And so I usually go into the Explorer and I get the address off the address bar. Then you got to copy and paste the file name too and put them together. Paul says, for copying a file path, you can hold down the Windows key and press R. That will launch the run box. Okay, I'm familiar with that. If you drop a file or folder onto it, it will give you the full path, which you can then copy. Okay, and to which I replied, that's a neat little trick. I'll never remember it myself, but I'll share it with you guys. All right, let's test it. Windows R, there's the run box. I'm familiar with that. All right, here we go. Here's a file on my desktop. Click, drag, drop. Well, I'll be. There it is. There's the whole thing right there. Cool little tip. There's so many of these cool shortcut tips. I'd go crazy. My advice is to find ones that you think are really neat and you're going to actually use on a daily basis and use those. Because I'll never remember all the millions of tips that I've come across over the years. A couple of questions on my recent Search Multiple Fields video. Lindsay asks, excellent video. A quick question, can I search for the same number from 2 tables or queries at the same time? Sure, you could. If those tables are related, just join them together, and then the result will be in the same table. Like I got customer ID and order ID, right? And that query that I used in the video, you could search for that. And if it's either a customer ID or an order ID, it'll show up. If they're not related, you'll just have to launch 2 separate queries to search for them. If you got customers and, I don't know, dogs, whatever. And of course, if the customers aren't related to the dogs. But you know what I'm saying? So you just have to launch 2 separate queries. Now, you can't launch 2 queries with the command button wizard the way that it is in the in the command button toolbox there. It'll only launch 1 query at a time. So you need to use a tiny bit of VBA, but you could run 2 queries with 2 different open query commands. And you'll see them both on the screen at the same time. Or you can make a form with 2 subforms. There's a million ways you could do it. Can you do it? Yes, absolutely. It's just all about how you want to go approaching doing it. Next up, Sage from Korea says he has a question. If you've got 10 million records, which one of those methods is faster? The one where you combine all the fields with the ampersand and concatenate, or the one with the like on each field? Well, if your fields are indexed, it will definitely be faster if you put the or condition on each field. Because if you concatenate them all together, then that's extra overhead that the database has to do on each record. It's got to add all those together. I think I might not have made it perfectly clear in the video, but the concatenate trick is really for small databases. It's just easier to write. You know, if you're working with a small database and you got a whole bunch of fields, you want to just smash them together. You know, if you're dealing with 10 million records, you definitely want to make sure your fields are indexed properly, and you do want to have the or condition on each field. That will run faster, because as soon as the database engine can throw out a record, it will. It doesn't have to concatenate everything together first. Okay? Yeah, a few different people have asked the same question, so yep. B8 asks, hello, is there a way to read text in Arabic on Access? I watched a video of you reading text in English. First of all, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, and second of all, I don't know. I don't know or speak or read any other languages except for English. So that's one of my deficiencies of skill when it comes to anything really is I'm an English speaker only. So if you got questions about Arabic, maybe find an Arabic access group and ask them. Or if any other readers on here speak Arabic, someone post a comment and let them know. Next up is a question about my toggle close button video, where I show you how to turn off the little close button up here in the upper right corner of the window, right? So you turn it on and off, on and off. And I show you how to do that in the video. And MO6 is asking, can you use the same principles if you're using the tabbed forms instead of floating windows? The answer is I don't know. I never use the tab document interface. I don't like it. I didn't use it when it first came out. The very first thing I did was switch back to the overlapping windows. It's one of the first things that I cover in my Access Beginner 1 class so that we're all on the same page. And I have a whole separate video on just how to do this, because this I don't think is very efficient, having a big giant form with one thing. This is much more efficient, having a menu and other little forms that open up next to it. This is a traditional Access database. This, I don't know. You might as well use Excel with different sheet tabs and stuff. I guess it all depends on how you use Access. Access is versatile. It'll do both. But this is how I like it. This is what I teach. And yeah, I could take 5 or 10 minutes and try it in a tab document interface. But you know what? You will learn better if you try it yourself instead of just asking me, right? Pop the code in. See if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, you just learned something. In fact, I got a whole video on that topic. Try it yourself. If you got a question about something, if you think you can figure it out, I guarantee you will learn better by figuring it out on your own. Now, if you take 5, 10 minutes and you try it and you can't figure it out, then ask an expert, then post in the forum, right? But give it a shot. I've learned most of what I know from books and from just, oh, let's see if we can do this. Let's tear this apart. Let's just experiment, right? Have fun with it. Next question from BT Bassett. Same video. He says he wonders if it's possible to use the API calls to hide the buttons on the main Access app window. I tried replacing form hwind with application, hwind access app, but no luck. Now, see, this is a sample question where he had a question, but he tried it himself first, which I applaud. The short answer for me is I don't know. I've never tried it. So I went and asked ChatGPT, as I do sometimes if I'm stuck. I find it more efficient than Googling stuff now. And I have not tested this myself yet, but it says, yes, it's possible to manipulate the Access Applications window using the Windows API. Here's some different stuff they gave. Here's some sample code, which you can feel free to screen capture or copy or whatever. Okay, or ask ChatGPT yourself. Notes, it will permanently remove the buttons until Access is restarted. If you hide the close button, the user won't be able to close Access normally, although I'm pretty sure they'll still be able to hit Alt F4 or kill the task, obviously, with the Windows Task Manager. And test carefully, because messing with Access's Windows system menu can sometimes cause unintended behavior. That I have experienced before. Windows APIs can cause some weird behavior in Access. And then it said, would you like me to provide a version that allows toggling these buttons on-off dynamically? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Okay, if you can. So here's a toggleable one. Very similar, right? Let me get it so you can see all the code here. Well, you can't. Let me come over to the right. There you go. Okay, so there's all that. You can pause the video and grab the code if you want. There's the rest of it. There's the usage, right? Toggle on off. And yeah, it even says right here, it says this does not prevent closing access using Alt F4 or the Task Manager. So I don't know. Someone try this and let me know if it works. I've never had a need to do this myself, because any decent computer user knows how to kill an application, right? If you got people using your Access database, if they don't know Alt F4 and they don't know how to kill a task, well, I'd be surprised. But any semi-intelligent computer user is going to figure out how to close the application. So I've never tried to do this myself, but you asked. So ChatGPT says it's possible. Let me know if it works. Jade Dragon says, crazy how convoluted that has to be. Anytime I want a close button to at least temporarily not be there, I get rid of the control box and have an X close button at the top. Of course, the button image I've been using looks off since it's from Windows XP. Yeah, I do that myself too. And it's convoluted because certain things that you'd think Access would have built into it, like the ability to turn off and back on again the close button, right? That should be a toggleable setting. I don't know why it is. Sammy, add that to the list, I guess, right? It's not in there, so you got to use a Windows API call, and that's just going over Access's head. It's like saying, hey, Daddy, take care of this for me, right? But I feel what you're saying, though. I have a little button myself. I don't even bother putting an X button on it. I just make a little button in the upper right corner that just says close window. That's mine right there. That's literally just says close form. I don't even care. This is in my customer service form, right? Because a lot of time when my customer service form opens, it's a continuous form. It shows all the customer service emails I have to answer for the day. And when I click on one, I have an on-current event that opens up the customer's record next to it. Another reason why I like to use overlapping windows. And that will show me all their relevant information too, like their orders and whatever. Because 9 times out of 10, their questions are about, their orders and the courses that they have. Like this person's asking if they can retake classes they purchased in the past. And yes, of course you can. There's no time limit on them. But the problem is that if I close one and it moves to the other one, while that on-current event is running, sometimes I get impatient. I hit the close button. It closes that, and then the event that was opening up the customer form crashes, and it causes a VBA error. So I did this to prevent myself from closing this window while the event is running. So I hide that, run the event, and then put it back there. And I did this years ago before I came up with this code. So that's why. Next up, we got Uriel Ramirez asking a question about the search multiple fields extended cut. He says he Googled doing search in msaccess with regular expressions and your videos did not come up. Okay, all right, we'll talk about that in a minute. Using SQL for search is great, but if you could use regular expressions, that would be more efficient language. And if you did a video about it, it'd be like Captain Picard using the Temerian language in season 5, episode 2. Now, any question that throws a good Star Trek reference in there, you have my thumbs up. That's one of my favorite episodes. For those of you who don't know, it's Darmok. That's where Captain Picard gets sent down to a planet with a Temerian. This guy, played by Paul Winfield, he was also in The Terminator. Great actor. And he has to basically learn the language, and the universal translator doesn't work because it's based on metaphors. It's a really weird, unique language. Darmok at Tanagra. And Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. It's been a few years since I've seen it. It's a great episode. One of my favorite other episodes with Picard having to learn a language is from the season 1 episode called Dixon Hill. That's one of our first holodeck malfunction episodes, and you can tell it's season 1 because Riker doesn't have the beard. Then we get this gem.
This is Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the Enterprise. Klaxon Ries Blaj Blanarnik Karnik. Trasula. Trasula.
Yeah, it was great. All right, but now let's get down to the question. Regular expressions. So regular expressions is a way to validate strings or to enforce specific formats like zip codes or phone numbers using a library called regex. Now, it's not built into Access, it's not built into VBA, but there is a library reference for it available. It's called the Microsoft VBScript Regular Expressions Library. And then you can write functions that look like this. This is the valid pattern for a regex email address. Yeah, it's pretty complicated. I personally have never really needed to use regex. I know it's been around for a while, but everything that I've needed to do, I've just used basic string manipulation functions for. And as any of you who've been following my channel for a while know, I generally try to avoid external libraries. If it's not something that's built into Access, I try not to use it. Plus, Microsoft has announced plans to depreciate VBScript. So if it's going to be around for a while, who knows? There'll probably be something else that comes around that'll take its place. I know there's some scripting options like this in PowerShell and .NET. But if enough of you are interested, I'll do a video on regular expressions. But like I said, in my 30-year career of using Access, I really haven't needed it. So I haven't bothered. But great question, and thanks for the awesome Star Trek reference. Next up, a question about my next business day video, where I teach you how to find the next business day. So if it's a Monday, it'll give you a Tuesday. If it's a Wednesday, it'll give you a Thursday. If it's a Friday, it'll give you a Monday. And we do it with some basic math, looking at the weekday function. Tata Dagnogo wants to know, how would you get the next 5 business days date from any particular date? Well, you could do it with the same similar math that I show in this video, right? So if you want 5 business days in the future, that'd be basically the next week. If you think about it, right? So if it's Monday, you're going to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. So essentially, I would just add 7. And basically, that's the date, right? 5 business days is the next week. Now, the only exclusion to that would be if you want to take into consideration holidays and things like that. And if that's the case, I would use my workdays function. I call it my mynet workdays function. Excel has the same function where you can give it 2 dates, and it'll figure out the number of workdays between them. You would basically just be reverse engineering this. You'd say, give me a start date, and I want to add this many workdays to it, and it just runs a loop, and it's going to exclude any holidays. And in the extended cut, I show you how to exclude any custom holidays. So if your business has certain days they're taking off, like a National Star Trek Lovers Day, if you take, given that day off, you can add that to your own custom table, and it will include those in the calculation. So check out this video. Hrubinkudus asks, if you have a continuous form or a datasheet form, is there a way for the new record to be at the top instead of the bottom? Well, first of all, I never use datasheet forms, so I don't know about that. But a continuous form, yes, you absolutely can do that. And of course, I've got a video on it. Go check it out. I'll put a link down below. George wants to know if I'm going to be doing any videos on classes in Microsoft Access. Yes, I'll definitely be recording a lesson or 2 on classes and building class modules, but it's probably going to be an Access developer lesson as part of my full developer course. I've had it on my to-do list for a while now. I may or may not do a short tech help video on it, but it's a pretty in-depth topic, so it's most likely going to be a developer course. And I'll be honest, there are some neat uses for it. But in Access, like I said, in my 30 years of a career with Access, I've never needed a class or a class module. I've built them for fun a couple times in some sample projects, but I've never had anything that I had to do that required a class. Classes are great in object-oriented languages, C++, that kind of stuff. I used to program in that years ago. But again, in Access, I've never needed one. But I'm going to show some cool examples of things you can do with them. We'll see. I'm probably going to do a developer course on it to go in depth, and then maybe throw a quick tech help video together just to give the basic overview. I've hidden this user's name because I don't want anybody getting in trouble at work, but they said that they might get to put their new skills with Microsoft Access to use at some point in the future. A new manager at work is really keen on moving some of the stuff from pen and paper to computer, so who knows? Basically a pushback from new computer stuff. And I say, yeah, I've dealt with a lot of clients like that in the past. You get one person in there, maybe a young, eager manager who's all about computerizing stuff, and then the boss who's 80 years old and is still using a slide rule is like, no, I like my index cards. Get off my lawn. I've dealt with lots of companies like that, where the people who actually do the work are the ones that want to be more efficient, and they want an updated database. And I remember one of my first clients when I first started doing this back in the 90s. I'm not going to name names, but it was an old company. They'd been around for 100 years, manufacturing company. And they were still using a DOS-based system, probably written in the early 80s. It was running on I think it was like a Tandy 1000 or something super old. Like, I had this computer in my school in like 8th grade, I think it was. And I had to drag them screaming and kicking into Windows. And it was like pulling teeth. And the people that actually were, the people working every day doing, putting in the purchase orders and managing the inventory, it took them 8 days to do what the new database could do in like 2 hours. And the funny thing is though, when everything is said and done, it took me like 3 months to build this system for them, and it worked great. I was very proud of myself. But then when it was all done, one woman comes up to me and she says, this was my whole job pretty much, was this process that took 8 days. You're going to cost me my job. And then I just basically said to him, look, you don't have to let anybody know how long it really takes you to do inventory now. So yeah, there's efficiency, and then there's job security. So be careful. Careful out there, developers. Don't make anybody mad. And finally tonight, T. Coving asks, is there a way to link Neuralink and ChatGPT with some Access API to just automatically build a database as I think it up? Seems like a developer level for sure. Yes, absolutely. I came up with this technology a couple of years ago. I call it BrainWave training. Now, I developed it for training, not necessarily for building databases, but I guess you could modify the technology very easily. Here it is. Check it out. I'll put a link down below. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for spending some time with me. That's your Quick Queries number 32. I hope you learned something. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button right now and give me a like. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel, which is completely free. And make sure you click that bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever I post a new video. Do you need help with your Microsoft Access project? Whether you need a tutor, a consultant, or a developer to build something for you, check out my Access Developer Network. It's a directory I put together personally of Access experts who can help with your project. Visit my website to learn more. Any links or other resources that I mentioned in the video can be found in the description text below the video. Just click on that Show More link right there. YouTube's pretty good about hiding that, but it's there. Just look for it. Now, if you have not yet tried my free Access Level 1 course, check it out now. It covers all the basics of Microsoft Access, including building forms, queries, reports, tables, all that stuff. It's over 4 hours long. You can find it on my website or my YouTube channel. I'll include a link below you can click on. And did I mention it's completely free? And if you like Level 1, Level 2 is just $1. That's it. And it's free for members of my YouTube channel at any level. Speaking of memberships, if you're interested in joining my channel, you get all kinds of awesome perks. Silver members get access to all of my extended cut tech help videos, and there's hundreds of them by now. They also get one free beginner class each month, and yes, those are from my full courses. Gold members get the previous perks plus access to download all of the sample databases that I build in my tech help videos. Plus, you get access to my code vault where I keep tons of different functions and all kinds of source code that I use. And gold members get one free expert class every month after completing the beginner series. Platinum members get all of the previous perks, plus they get all of my beginner courses, all of them from every subject, and you get one free advanced or developer class every month after finishing the expert series. And you can become a diamond sponsor and have your name listed on the sponsor page on my website. So that's it. Once again, my name is Richard Rost. Thank you for watching this video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time.